Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be my girlfriend is the best one ever, but I want to be single again. What should he do? So I got to email this particular guy. I guess sometime in the past year, I did a previous video newsletter for him called Vetting Your Dates Properly, Body Count, X's, and Male Orbiters. And so he says he's read 3% Man 10 times, and he's had plenty of women, had a lot of success over the last few years with the help he's gotten in my book, 3% Man. But he says his girlfriend that he's in a relationship now is the best that he's ever had. But he's like, he feels the calling of the wild. There's like something over that next hill that's kind of calling him. And he doesn't feel like he wants to stay in the relationship. But he also was like, what if I leave her and then the next girl's not as cool? What should I do? And so he's like, everything's great in a relationship, but he just doesn't feel like he wants to stay. And so he asked my opinion. He's like, should I stay? Should I go? Like the old Clash song. Should I stay or should I go? So let's take a look. He says, hey, Coach, greetings from Colombia. I'm Bob, and you answered one of my emails about 5 months ago titled, Vetting Your Dates Properly, Body Count, X's, and Male Orbiters. And I wanted to give you an update as well as ask a question, which I believe you haven't touched upon much. Oh, I've answered this question a lot of times over the years, but it's always good to go back to the fundamentals. In your response video, you mentioned that typically guys that are inexperienced get sensitive about a girl's body count. Yeah, usually guys really do that aren't getting any. The ones that are the most vocal, the dudes that ain't getting any pussy. He says, however, in my case, I've been with more women than I wish to share, and thanks to reading 3% Man about 10 times, that doesn't apply to me. After giving it a lot of thought and even a few sessions of individual and couples therapy, I realized what bothered me was not the body count itself, since hers is somewhat low at 6, but rather the one specific dude she had slept with, the best friend. Yeah, the idea when it comes to body count is you want to know that, especially if you're a guy that's wanting to wife up a girl for life, and you're trying to make the best. In other words, you always got to know your downside risk. You're trying to determine what's her character like. Is she going to honor the commitment? Is she the loyal and faithful type that will always be loyal and faithful even when things aren't going well? Or is she more of a girl that's like a fuck buddy friends with benefits that is loyal as long as she's happy, but if she's not, she's looking for the exits. She's going to be given an invitation to other men to try to seduce her. You got to figure out you got to vet women properly. You got to figure out what are you dealing with? What's her character like? So if you're looking to stay long term and you want to have a family, you want somebody that's going to want to stick around and want to be a good mom and be a good example. A woman that's got integrity. A chick that's constantly lying and giving out her phone number and encouraging other guys to slide into her DMs. It's a party girl, a hookup girl. I mean, that's common sense. You don't try to wife up those girls or get into a long-term relationship or have a family with somebody like that, especially if they just don't seem to have the same values, family-oriented values that you may be looking for. So in this case, this guy's going, has obviously spent some time finding out about all the dudes that she's hooked up with. And while it's useful to make sure you're not getting together with somebody that's, maybe slept with hundreds of dudes and will cheat at the drop of a hat, but somebody that's, you want somebody that's selective. In other words, because it's easy for women to get laid. I mean, let's face it, any average pretty girl can go out to pretty much any bar on a Friday night and tap the average dude in the shoulder and say, hey, you want to go home and bang, or you want to smash? And most guys be like, hell yeah, let's go. And so for what you want is you want somebody that's selective. She's just because she feels attraction and connection and chemistry with somebody doesn't mean that she's going to sleep with them. She's going to take her time. She's going to want to get to know the guy and not just be going home with 2 or 3 different dudes every weekend, even though there's lots of girls out there that do those things. And you can have a lot of fun, especially when you're young and you get experience that way, but those typically are not the kind of girls that you're going to want to wife up. I mean, that should be common sense, but a lot of guys, especially dudes in the military, they're historically known for making bad choices and having a whirlwind romance with a stripper they met over the weekend and getting married, and then 2 weeks later they're deployed again, and they're gone for many months at a time, and then they find out their wife is sleeping with their best friend and several of their other guy friends back home while they're deployed. And it's just, there was like no vetting at all. It's just all based on emotions and just assuming everything's going to be great. And it's like going into business with a total stranger and not know, and then you get screwed over. You're like, well, you didn't even vet the person. Or it's like buying a car without really test driving it or trying to figure out if it's been an accident or something's been messed with. It's like you got to do your research. You got to always know your downside risk in everything you get into in life. And especially for guys, it's like to have a conversation with a woman and then start going over every girl that you've dated or kissed or slept with. It's like none of that stuff is going to add value. None of that stuff is going to make her like you more. It's just better to kind of get a general feel for her perspective on dating and who she sleeps with. You look at her friends. If all of her friends are girls that are going out every weekend and hooking up with a different dude every week, well, more than likely she's probably the same way. If most of her girlfriends are family oriented and they have stable long-term boyfriends and they maybe occasionally go out and have a drink or two, but they're not going out clubbing and acting like single girls. And so the values of a woman's peer group is going to tell you a lot about who she is, because you are who you associate with. And so if you're trying to determine if somebody's a good candidate, what are her friends? What's her peer group like? What are the girls like that she hangs out with? What is her relationship with her dad like? Typically, women that come from good families and have a good relationship with their mom and dad, and their parents are family oriented and they're loyal to one another. Typically, the kids tend to have a higher percentage of turning out that way, versus girls that come from broken homes with no dad, or a dad that she hates. And so this guy's all upset about this, this friend, this dude that she had slept with. And again, it's like, these are just not things that are going to help the relationship, because all this shit happened before he ever got to know her. And especially if a guy is getting really mad or really upset, and deep down you think, man, maybe he's a little threatened by that guy. Maybe dude's better looking, or he's more successful, or he has money. Bottom line is, if you're going to get upset and jealous and butthurt over some other guy that a girl you're dating now dated in the past, that's not displaying confidence. That's not going to help your case. It's not going to make you look attractive. So he says, this dude is what I consider to be unattractive, and most importantly, just someone I don't respect as a man. Long story short, he's a much older guy who sleeps with the easy younger girls. So there it is. So he's jealous of this older man who is sleeping with women that are his age. So it's like, I did a video, we were talking about this the other day. It was one of the video newsletters. It's like, typically that's what happens. Younger guys get pissed at dudes like me that date younger women, and vice versa. Older women get mad at older guys like me who date younger women. And so in this case, he's not happy because this guy's older and is known for dating younger girls. So that tells me on some level he's threatened. In other words, he feels inadequate. He feels like he doesn't measure up, because quite frankly, there's really no reason for him to feel jealous about this other dude, unless he worries that this other guy potentially has more power and confidence, can come and just take this girl from him. He says he even tried to make her cheat on her previous boyfriend, so it really bothered me that she would ultimately fall for that type of dude. Well, obviously he has confidence, he has some swagger, and a lot of guys just don't give a shit. They don't care if you're married or you have a boyfriend. If they like the girl, they're going to hit on her and try to seduce her. And so, but at the end of the day, because there's such a scarcity of masculinity in society, even the bad boys that do things like this, encourage ratchet behavior, they're still getting laid because they act more masculine than most of the dudes that they're competing against, especially the younger guys. Because most younger guys are soft, they're inexperienced, they're not stable in their careers yet. And typically women on average are 5 or 6 years older, or 5 or 6 years ahead maturity versus guys their own age. That's why women typically, in general, tend to date guys that are a little older, just because it takes longer for a man to get his act together and get his career in order, get a good place to live, get a car payment, finish college, get his life in order, furnish his apartment, hang some pictures on the wall, not just have a futon in the living room with a TV and an Xbox and nothing else in the rest of the house. Even though it's fun when you're a college student or you're broke or whatever, at some point you need to get to a minimum level of competency, especially if you're going to have a mature adult relationship with a woman who maybe potentially eventually is going to depend on you to be the sole provider so you guys can have kids and raise them together. And so women notice these things. Are you competent? Can you pay your bills on time? And so back to her email, he says, as I mentioned in my previous email, she's an unbelievable girl and immediately broke ties with that dude. She's also now stopped talking about her previous relationships and sex partners unless I ask. He says, finally. He says, my question is this. Ever since she told me she slept with him, I lost a lot of attraction for her. And it's a thought that constantly creeps back into my head and takes away my peace. So this dude is living rent-free in your head. She's already cut him off, and yet you're still letting a guy live rent-free. That's not masculine. That's not attractive. And especially if you're communicating to her that you feel threatened by this guy, that's not a good thing. Because if things aren't going well between you, she'll probably troll you with him a little. Oh, guess who I heard from? You'll get something like that. Oh, so-and-so slid into my DMs recently. The attraction part is not unusual for me since I've always been a guy that loses interest quickly, typically just after a few weeks. I've known her for over a year now and have been officially dating for 7 months, so it could be simply that is just part of my personality. I want something new at this point. Well, also, the other thing you got to consider is what was your life growing up? What was your family life growing up? So if you're used to your family environment being full of chaos and drama and things not going well, when you're in a normal, healthy relationship, that's going to feel abnormal to you. You're not going to feel right. If you're used to drama, you'll create drama. You'll create problems because that feels normal to you. It doesn't feel normal to be in a happy, healthy, good relationship. So that's something to consider. Because guys that get into relationships with good women, like it seems like she's a pretty good girlfriend. He does say it's the best he's ever had so far. That if there's nothing wrong, but they're used to drama and dysfunction at home, that they'll actually create that without even realizing it. So he'll end up sabotaging a good relationship just because he can't handle it. It doesn't feel normal to him. He says, I've known her for over a year and I've been officially dating for 7 months. And he says, so I'm stuck in this dilemma of whether to break up with an amazing woman. She really is the best girl I've ever been with, that I'm no longer 100% attracted to, or stick with it for a bit longer and see if her amazingness causes me to change my mind and start envisioning a future with her. Well, the future you should be envisioning is, are you going to stick around? Do you see this woman as the mother of your children? Would you like to have her raising your babies? It's as simple as that. And the other thing you got to take into consideration is, what about her family? Because if you have kids with her, well, her family's going to be involved too. Do you like her parents? Would you like to have her parents as grandparents to your kids? And if the answer is no, well, there's something that's a data point that you need to consider. And so if you're going to be with somebody long term, especially when you're young like this, it ideally would be because you want to have kids and start a family. But if you're not interested in having kids, or you don't want to have a family, or maybe you just don't want to have a family with her, then yeah, you shouldn't stick with her. You should let her go and just tell her you're just not in the same place. You don't want to settle down. You don't want to have a family. You just want to be single and you want to keep dating, other than the fact she's a great girl. And then let her go so she can find a guy that will give her what it is that she wants. So and then the other thing you got to keep in mind is the infatuation period, the honeymoon. It lasts maybe 6 to 12 months. So he's coming towards the end of the honeymoon period. And then after the fact, if she's easygoing, easy to get along with, easy to communicate with, because the whole purpose of all relationships is you go there to give. Do you still want to give to her in a way or in the ways that you need to in order to maintain the relationship? Because the reality is you're not always going to be driven by your emotions and your infatuation and your strong attraction. There's especially the longer you're together, you add kids in the mix, living together, just being together for a long period of time. There's going to be a lot of days you come home and you're tired and you just want to go to sleep or you want to do your own thing, but you got a house full of people that depend on you. And so it's not just you anymore. And so you got to think about the other people in your home. And the question is, do you love her enough? Do you appreciate her enough? Do you value her enough to want to keep making the effort to maintain the relationship? Because again, once you get out of the infatuation, the honeymoon period, it's the same thing with sex. Because a lot of times, the longer you're together, what ends up happening, it's very easy to get to the point where, oh, you're just having sex once a week. And then next thing you know, okay, it's every 2 weeks. And the reality is the numbers are good, healthy relationships, sex 2 to 3 times a week on average, at least. Long-term relationships that last many decades, those are the numbers. When it's less sex than 2 or 3 times a week, typically the relationships start going sideways in the end. You got to have the intimacy there. And the reality is the longer you're together, there's a lot of times where she's going to want for you to lay the pipe and you're just not going to fucking feel like it. But you're going to need to because you're going to want to pleasure her and you're going to want to make her feel good. You're not going to want to constantly reject her because there's going to be times where you're going to want to bust a nut and she's not going to be exactly super feeling it. But because things are so close and the intimacy is there, she'll just submit and let you have your way with her because she loves you and she wants you to be fulfilled. So he says, I've always enjoyed the chase and the game, taking girls out on dates and just enjoying the single life. She was just so amazing that I decided to give this a shot, but between a feeling of disgust about her sleeping with that dude and my historical desires for something new, I'm a bit confused. Well, again, you're going to have to let it go. You can't do anything. You don't have a time machine. You can't go back in time and prevent her from hooking up with that guy. And the reality is... every woman I could think of that I've either gotten to know some of their exes, whether it's ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, whatever it happened to be, I don't think there was a single one of them that I wasn't like, she could have done better than that guy. Come on. What was she thinking? That's always going to happen. And so for you to be getting upset, because again, it really looks like he's threatened by this older guy. He worries that he's got some kind of power over her and he could come back in the picture and take her from him. That's the only thing that really makes sense. That's why he's hung up on it. He says, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm leaning more towards ending it and going back to the single life, but I also would hate to break her heart without giving it a proper chance. Well, I would give it 90 days and just see how you feel after 90 days. And again, this is why, one of the chapters in the book is gentlemen don't kiss and tell. In other words, find out that she's just not giving the pussy up to anybody that wants it. In other words, she's selective. That's the important thing about sex and body count. It's like, what kind of a woman are you dealing with? But getting to the point where you know every single dude, and it's like you've seen pictures, and you know who they are, and you know all the intimate, gory details. It's like it's never going to go well. It's not going to be helpful. It's not, and like I said, you see this guy. He knows so much about this other dude that it's like wrecking his confidence. The dude's literally living rent free in his head, and yet. This guy came into and out of her life for the most part before he even knew her. It was like, there's nothing you can do about it. The only thing you can do is accept it. And the reality is, next time you meet a girl and you feel this way about her, there'll be some of her exes. You'll be like, that dude's a chump. What the fuck was she thinking? Why would she date that guy? Why would she give up her box to that guy? What a fucking loser. But the way you should be looking at it is like, hey, I'm the best that she's ever had. You should be proud of that. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to previous boyfriends or hers and feeling bad or feeling inadequate because that's not good for your mindset. Because the more you think about that shit, you're going to start communicating weakness. You're going to start communicating that you're jealous and you feel threatened. And when women sense a chink in your armor and they sense a weakness, they're going to exploit it and they're going to test you. So that's definitely something to think about. As far as what you should do or not, like I said, I'd give it 90 days, see how you feel after 90 days, but you're not going to be able to change this. And the reality is the next girl, there'll be dudes in her past, you'll be going, what? She really dated that guy? She really slept with that guy? But that's the way it is, man. That's life. It's not a Sears catalog. Life is not a Hallmark greeting card. It's not perfect. It typically tends to be a little messy. So if you got a question or challenge and you'd like to get my help, go to understandingrelationships.com, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book a coaching session with yours truly. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.